At this time, I'll call the Budget Committee meeting to order and ask Angelique to call roll, please.
Okay. Cole. Hannum.
Here.
Lewis.
Here.
Mitchell.
Here.
Moon.
Here.
Okay. We have a quorum.
And I'll ask if you would to please make the emergency announcement.
Before we get started, let me read the emergency evacuation procedures. In the event of an emergency evacuation, an alarm will sound. Everyone should exit the building by way of the nearest stairwell in a safe and effective manner. If the nearest stairwell is blocked by smoke, use the other stairwell. Do not use the elevator. Once you've reached the main floor, follow the exit signs to exit the building and quickly proceed away from the building. Please be mindful of others evacuating and of emergency vehicles.
Commissioner Cole will be arriving later. I'll now ask if there's any input on items on the agenda. Seeing none, move on to item D, approval of the minutes. These minutes need approved and they are in your packet. Do I have a motion? Have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? I'll ask for a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Declare the motion passed. Item E is finance. We have the finance portion of the agenda. First one up is increased decreases, school fund 143. Have a move to approve. Have a second. Any discussion? Do we need Troy to come up and have any discussion?
Let's have him just give us.
Troy, would you like to come up?
Grant is a request through the state of Tennessee that would allow us to buy a serving line for Lanier Elementary School. The grant's $20,000. The serving line that we would like to buy, we've put it out for bid. The actual cost is a little more than that. We're going to have to pick up the difference with local monies that are in that budget line for equipment. About 7,000. Just when we put the serving line out for bid, the low bid came in at about 27,000. So we're having to pick up the difference with local funds, which we knew that was a possibility when we applied for the grant.
Is there any other discussion or any questions? Thank you, Troy.
Thank you.
I'll now ask for a roll call vote, please.
Yes.
Lewis. Yes. Mitchell.
Yes.
Moon.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Item E1B, Circuit Court Clerk Fund 101, digital recording software for juvenile courtrooms. This is being funded from the reserve. Have a motion to get it on the floor. Have a motion and a second. Discussion. We have Judge Foster here. Is there anyone that needs to have her come up and explain this?
It's mandated by state law.
It is. Okay. Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Let me say one thing before you vote on this. We've attached to this an analysis of the reserve so that you can see how much money is in the circuit court clerk's reserve, what's been spent out of that, and then what's being proposed tonight. So it appears that if you were to approve and the commission approve this, they would still have some $360,000 in reserve.
Now I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Hannum.
Yes.
Lewis. Yes. Mitchell.
Yes.
Moon.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item E1C, Health Department Fund. This is actually funded by the state. It's part-time positions moving to full-time. Do I have a motion?
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or questions?
Just one, this says allows flexibility if any of the part-time positions become full-time. So are they asking for a full-time position from a part-time position?
Mary Ann, would you please come up?
We are not asking to, we currently have two part-time positions that we're proposing to become full-time or already have become full-time. When the budget is done, on the Blount County end, it's budgeted by employee, and this just increases the amount of the contract to agree with what the state's contract amount is. And this way, when we move some part-time people to full-time, that amount will be moved up to benefits line item to allow us to pay for their benefits also.
Are the positions and the benefits fully funded by the state?
Yes, fully funded by the state. Going forward, and we've put that in next year's budget also.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Thank you, Mary Ann. I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Hannum,
Yes.
Lewis. Mitchell,
Yes.
Moon.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item E1D, Animal Center, it's Fund 101. This is a SMAC-F funded project for part-time vet. Randy, can you explain that?
The Smoky Mountain Animal Care Foundation has already provided us with $1,500 for the purpose of funding additional hours for the part-time vet tech, not the vet, the vet tech. And we need to accept that money and then amend the budget to where we can pay the vet tech for the additional hours worked.
Get it on the floor. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Motion and a second. Open for discussion or questions. Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Hannum,
Yes.
Lewis. Mitchell,
Yes.
Moon.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item F, discussion, possible action on grant applications. All of these have no matching funds required on any of these grants that are presented here.
Mr. Chairman, I move F1A through E to be forwarded on.
Okay, have a motion to move all forward in a group. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? I'll ask for a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Now we go to the grants, and I'll ask for,
We need to do F1F. That wasn't included in the
okay, but we need to get the others. All we did was put them together. Now we need to vote on them.
Okay, all right.
So now you have all of them but F1F to vote on. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Have a motion. Do I have a second? Okay. Is there any discussion or questions? I think Chief's here if there's any questions on any of these grants.
Are there any new grants? Are these the ones that we've had each year?
Jeff, excuse me, Jared?
Yes, the only new one that's from previous years is item E, which is the nighttime seatbelt program. That's one we didn't apply for, but UT acknowledged that, they kind of drew so many out of the state and offered that up to us.
So
And it's for $10,000.
That's the new one.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Any other discussion on these? I'll ask for a roll call vote, please. Thank you.
Hannum,
Yes.
Lewis. Mitchell,
Yes.
Moon.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. F1F, District Attorney General's abatement prosecution enhancement grant. Randy?
Yes, committee, this is one that does not require county commission attention. This is all strictly state and probably should have never been included in the packet. It did come to commission last year, but none of this money is county money, runs through the county coffers at all. It's not even accounted for. It just so happens to be on the county's grant application form, so I apologize for that. Does not require your attention.
So that we don't need to vote on this at all? Okay. Moving on to F2, 2015-16 budget, Fund 151 debt service. Taylor?
Yeah, there should be a handout at everyone's laptop, and it'll be on the screen in front of you. So, as you know, we did a refinancing that closed in March. So this is to give you an overview at where we were and where we are now. So, in summary, we have 7 bonds, 5 loans, and 2 capital leases. So that makes up in whole our debt portfolio. And the main idea from this is to show the refinancing timeline, what it entails. So it takes roughly about 6 months. Starting in October, PFM, who's our financial advisor, came in and presented 3 options for our refunding. From those 3, the budget committee picked one, which was to go with level debt service with terminating the swaps. From that, we sent it to the comptroller, who approved our plan, sent it back to us, who then it was approved unanimously by commission. And once that happened, the accounting department with PFM worked to get all the necessary documents together so we could take it to the rating agencies, be evaluated, and then ultimately close on the bond and reissue the debt as fixed rate debt from synthetically fixed with the swaps. So previously in this budget year, our debt service was at roughly $15.9 million, which will change according to with the refinancing because we have some issuance costs that have to be accounted for. Before the refinancing, next budget year's debt service would be at $16.7 million, and then after the refinancing, it will be at $17.8. And so the difference from current year to pre-refinancing is roughly $866,000. The difference between the two pre-15-16 debt service and post-15-16 debt service is a little over $1 million. And the difference between current year debt service and post-refinancing debt service is $1.9 million, which will also change due to the refinancing with the issuance costs. The refinancing ultimately took advantage of a low interest rate environment, helped lower our financial risk, and is going to help pay off principal quicker because the debt used to not have any principal payments until 2030 and 2031. So that's a pretty quick overview of where we're at with debt, and I'm more than happy to answer questions.
Let me make sure that everyone understands, even if we had not been considering a refinancing, our debt service was going to increase in the 15-16 budget.
Yeah, by the $866,000. Because I could show you more in depth with numbers, but our debt service isn't level across the board. It fluctuates, so we don't pay the same in debt service every year, no matter the refinancing we just took on.
And if you'll recall from Lauren's presentation when PFM was in town, we have one of the more unusual debt structures of any of their clients. It's not a traditional debt structure. Doesn't mean it's good, doesn't mean it's bad. It's just not the norm. So that's why you will see a little volatility in our debt service from year to year. So for fiscal 16 budget, we've got to come up with $1.9 million in new money.
And the components that made up the increase are what?
Roughly, some of it will be the refinancing in terms of a principal payment, and some of it comes from a B16 loan, which principal went up another $60,000. So it's a couple of the loans and bonds amortization schedules increased. But the big chunk, I would say, would be this most recent debt service, because we're paying $1.2 million in principal, which we weren't previously going to pay. 1.285 to be exact.
Which was the point that some commissioners had made to me. Part of the trade-off in moving to the fixed rate financing is, since we're actually making principal payments earlier than 2030 and 2031, that saves us interest cost, which helps make the economic case a little more attractive.
This probably needs, Mr. Chairman, probably a question for Randy. Do you have pretty much the exact termination fee of the derivative?
For the most recent one, for the refinancing? Not exact, but it was a little over $7 million, like $7,065,000.
Okay, $7 million.
Roughly.
And that was done with non-tax-free or non-municipal bonds to buy that swap.
If you look at our debt portfolio, that would be the 2015A bond, and it will be taxable. And 2015B will be non-taxable at like nine, and that's $19 million roughly.
Okay, thank you.
This does not take into consideration any of the $80 million refinance that we're looking at. Okay. Any other questions for Taylor? Thank you, Taylor. F2B, this is also for information only, 1516 penny calculation. Randy?
Yes, you were previously given this to comply with state law, which requires the mayor to determine the value of a penny before March 15. You were sent this information directly. We're now including it in the packet so that it can go to the full commission for their information, because it's a piece of information that generally most folks find informative. So for the budget year 16, we're estimating the penny to be worth $317,500. This does not take into consideration making any assumptions on reappraisal. This assumes what growth, if any, we're expecting in the property tax base, natural growth, and then making our assumptions on what percentage we'll collect, and then valuing the penny on that arithmetic.
Discussion or questions, Mike?
Randy, what is the percentage of natural growth that we expect?
Well, I didn't have it in a percentage. We're estimating something around 5.8 million in new growth. And the reason that's important is you do not get penalized in the reappraisal process for new growth. So that is set aside, and then the valuation of the penny for the certified tax rate does not take that in consideration. So we get benefit of that. Any community gets benefit of new growth.
Thanks.
Any other discussion or questions? Move on. Fiscal year 15-16 State Comptroller Budget Memo. Susan?
Okay. As you're aware, we have to file with the Comptroller's Office every year our budget. Once you've passed it and adopted it, they have to approve it, they being the Office of State and Local Finance. That's per the law. because we have debt outstanding that they also have to review. This year, they have put us on notice, and I found this out a couple of weeks ago at the TGFOA meeting, that they are going to require some additional items. Normally, we send them your budget resolution, which includes the appropriations, the tax rate, but this year they're going to require, in addition, if you'll look at the attachments to their letter, there's an attachment B. They want to see our estimated cash balances, beginning and ending. They're interested in beginning and ending fund balances, which would be estimated. And noting that they made the point at the TGFOA meeting that just because you might balance, or just because a county might balance some of their budget with the use of fund balance, they've got to make sure that they have the cash to pay for that, because those are two different things. But the revenue piece is new. They specifically want to see revenue forecasts for property and sales tax. They want to see, if you look at attachment C, a schedule of outstanding debt. They also want to see attachment D, a schedule of budgeted debt payments. And then attachment E shows a cash flow statement. And they want to see that for both the general fund and the debt service fund. If you look back on the face of their letter, about the second paragraph down, they say, and I'm quoting this, a county that submits a budget with misstated revenues, expenditures, or beginning cash balances may be required to submit monthly reports. And they kind of underlined that at the meeting, that if what we give them as estimates for the year, our projections, if those look off, then they will start requiring us to make this report to them monthly. So they've really made this a priority. I know they mentioned that they've had a couple of municipalities and or counties where they've had to come in and actually force them to raise the tax rate. They've also had, I believe they said about 7 counties and or municipalities that they've had to actually take over within their office and take over the accounting work for them around these types of things. So it sounds pretty serious, but just be aware as we're going through the budget process that those are additional items that we've got to report, and not just report, but get approval on from them.
This is something they're making all the county and municipalities do, correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, certainly not just us. It's across the board. Cities and counties. The letter that you have before you is the one that we received last week in-house. It is specifically geared towards counties, but they do have a similar letter that they have sent to all municipalities as well.
And this was brought about from counties and municipalities not being able to manage their finances?
Yes, that's my understanding. Essentially, that'd be the bottom line.
Is there any other discussion or questions?
If I could draw your attention to one other item in here under the paragraph entitled the Budget and Property Tax Levy. The Comptroller's Office is requesting that county legislative bodies have a duty to adopt a property tax levy by the first Monday in July or as soon after as possible. I think, to the mayor's point, what this seems like to me is you're having difficulties in a variety of governments, and we seem to be experiencing new legislation in the General Assembly to address some of those problems, and then we're getting this type of, I'd call guidance, not law, but guidance on how we should carry out our responsibilities. And unfortunately, it appears to me that where they're experiencing difficulties, they want to make sure that everybody is impacted by wherever they're having problems in the state. So I find that very frustrating from a selfish standpoint.
Any other discussion on that? Item G, the finance reports. They're in your packet. They're for information only. This time, I'll ask if there's any input on items not on the agenda. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.